All right, today we are diving into a really fundamental human dilemma. One we all face at some point. And we're going to do it by looking at two classic stories. It's all about a choice that really defines who we are in moments big and small. So here's the big question we're tackling. When you're faced with someone who needs help, what's your first instinct? Do you hoard what you have, or do you help out? Do you protect what's yours, or do you share it? That single question, it's right at the heart of the two tales we're about to unpack. Okay, so what we're going to do is compare two totally different kinds of stories that both wrestle with this exact same moral question. On one hand, we've got a traditional folk ballad, and on the other, a really symbolic literary fairy tale. So, first up, we have A Legend of the Northland. Now, this is a ballad, basically a story passed down by word of mouth, part of folk culture. It's meant to teach a really clear, straightforward lesson, usually to kids. But then, on the complete other side of the spectrum, you have Oscar Wilde's The Happy Prince. And this is it's a piece of sophisticated literary art. It's packed with symbolism and paradox, and it's really designed for you to dig in and interpret it on a deeper level. So, yeah, two very different stories, two very different styles, but they're both tackling that one central theme. So what's interesting is how both of these stories kick off. They basically put their main characters on the spot, right from the get-go. They're hit with a challenge, a test, really, one that's designed to show us what they're made of, what their capacity for compassion really is. And, as you'll see, it plays out in two very different ways. And the contrast here is just fascinating, isn't it? For the little woman in the Northland, her test is super direct, it's personal. A holy man who's literally faint with hunger shows up at her door and asks for just one cake. Simple. But for the Happy Prince, his test is totally different. It's observational. See, when he was alive, he was a real prince, totally shielded from any kind of suffering. But now, as a statue high above the city, he sees it all for the first time, all the misery of his people, and we're told it literally breaks his leaden heart. Okay, and this brings us right to the heart of it, the core of our comparison. Because it's not really about one single choice, is it? No. It's about a whole series of decisions, and they escalate, showing us step by step who these characters truly are deep down.
All right, first, let's follow the path of greed with the little woman. St. Peter asks for a cake, right? So she bakes a small one, but then she looks at it and thinks, you know what? That's way too big to just give away. So she tries again. She makes an even smaller one, but to her greedy eyes, it looks just as huge as the first one did. So for her third and final try, she takes this tiny, tiny scrap of dough and rolls it as thin as a wafer. And still, she just can't bring herself to part with it.
And this quote, it just nails the whole paradox of greed, doesn't it? She says it herself. The cakes that seem so small when she's eating them suddenly feel massive when she has to give one away. It's like her selfishness completely warps her perception of value. It's a brilliant bit of writing. Okay, now let's flip this script and look at the path of sacrifice. The Happy Prince, seeing all this suffering, enlists a little swallow to be his messenger. And he starts by giving away the big ruby from his sword to a poor seamstress. Then he takes it a step further, a much bigger sacrifice. He has the swallow pluck out his two sapphire eyes, one for a starving writer and one for a poor match girl. And then, for his final act of giving, he tells the swallow to strip off every single piece of gold leaf covering his body and give it all to the city's poor. Just wow.
And what's the result of all this? Well, the once beautiful golden statue is now just dull, gray, and blind. In the eyes of the world, he's given away everything that made him beautiful, everything that made him valuable.
So, we've seen the choices they made. Now it's time for the consequences. And in these kinds of moral tales, there's always a reckoning. Actions have outcomes. And what we see here is a really stark contrast between a very direct earthly punishment and a reward that's, well, out of this world.
So, St. Peter gets angry. He tells the little woman she's just too selfish to live in a human form, to have things like food and shelter and a warm fire. So he curses her. He transforms her into a woodpecker. And her punishment is a perfect fit for her crime, isn't it? Because she wouldn't share her food when she had plenty. Now she's doomed to work like crazy, drilling into hard wood all day long, just for a tiny little scrap of a meal.
Now, to really get what happens to the prince, it helps to know this one term, agape. It's a Greek word, and it means the highest form of love, a totally unselfish, generalized love for all of humanity. And a lot of people who've studied the story see the prince's journey as a fable about exactly that, about moving away from self-interest towards this agape love, and it's that quality, that selflessness, that ultimately gets rewarded. So get this.
The town's mayor, he sees this now ugly statue and decides it's an eyesore. He has it torn down and sent to be melted. But here's the crucial part. The lead heart, the prince's actual feeling heart, it won't melt in the furnace. So they just decide it's worthless and toss it on a pile of dust, right next to the body of the little swallow who had stayed with him. But then, God asks an angel to find the two most precious things in the entire city. And what does the angel choose? The broken lead heart and the dead bird. So you see, their ultimate reward isn't an earthly one at all. While the leaders of the city literally threw them out with the trash, God sees their true value. The swallow gets to sing forever in the Garden of Paradise, and the happy prince, he's praised in the city of gold for all eternity.
So why do these stories stick with us? I mean, why are we still talking about them? Well, they last because they work in very different but equally powerful ways. And that brings us to our final big picture comparison.
Yeah, this table really lays it all out. A legend of the Northland, that's a folk ballad. Its job is to teach a very simple, very clear lesson. Don't be greedy. Easy. The Happy Prince, on the other hand, is a literary allegory. It's way more complex, and its whole purpose is to make you think, to invite different interpretations. I mean, for a long time, people have seen it as a Christian allegory about sacrifice, and that totally fits. But because it's so layered, it opens the door for other readings. For instance, some modern scholars apply queer theory and see the intense emotional bond between the male prince and the male swallow as a kind of coded expression of same-sex love, which, for Victorian literature, was an incredibly daring thing to even hint at.
And that really brings us to the final question, the one I want to leave you with. What's the true measure of a rich life? Is it about what we manage to keep for ourselves? You know, like the little woman with her cakes all stacked up on the shelf? Or is it measured by what we give away? Like the prince, who ended up with literally nothing but a broken lead heart, but was judged to be the most precious thing in the city.
Welcome to The Explainer. You know, today we're digging into a poem that really taps into this deep, almost universal feeling, this persistent longing for escape. We're talking about a tiny little island from a poet's childhood, and the poem is, of course, William Butler Yeats's The Lake Isle of Innisfree. It's basically a timeless anthem for anyone who's ever just craved a bit of peace and quiet.
And the poem kicks off with this incredibly famous line, and you can just feel the urgency in it. It's almost desperate, right? He doesn't say, you know, I might go, or I'd like to go someday. Nope, it's, I will arise and go now. That word choice is so powerful. It immediately sets the stage for this overwhelming, undeniable need to just leave.
So at its heart, what we're looking at here is what's called a lyric poem. And honestly, the best way to think about that is to just think of the lyrics in a song you love. It's not trying to tell some huge epic story. Instead, it's zoomed in, it's super personal, and it's all about expressing one single powerful emotion. And in this case, it's the poet's intense, almost aching desire for the peace he remembers from Innisfree.
Right, so if we're going to put a more, university-level definition on it, a lyric poem is all about the internal world of the speaker. It's a deep dive into their personal feelings, their thoughts, their memories, and that is the exact lens Yeats is using here to let us see, and more importantly, to let us feel his longing for Innisfree.
Okay, so here's our game plan for this analysis. We're essentially going to follow the poet's own train of thought. We'll start with that powerful urge to escape, then we'll look at how he literally architects this simple life in his imagination. From there, we'll dive into the sensory details of the peace he's chasing, and finally, we'll get to the poem's really surprising twist about where this escape can actually be found.
All right, let's jump into section 1. So what's driving this incredibly urgent need to leave? I mean, to really get why Innisfree is pulling him so hard, you first have to understand what he's trying to run away from. The whole poem really is built on this huge contrast between two completely different worlds. And this really lays out that central conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got his reality, the city. And look at the words he uses, the roadway, the pavement's gray. It just sounds drab, lifeless, hard, right? It's a world of noise, of responsibility. But then, on the other side, you have the ideal, Innisfree. And it's so much more than just a place on a map. It's a symbol of a simple, beautiful, peaceful life.
Okay, so how is he actually going to pull this off? I mean, how does he plan to make this escape a reality? What's so interesting is that the poet isn't just vaguely wishing he was somewhere else. Oh no, he has a full-on, detailed blueprint for a brand new life, and it's all built around the idea of self-sufficiency.
And he lays out this plan, and it's so tangible.
It's so humble. I mean, this is not a fantasy about some grand palace in the clouds. He's talking about a small, earthy cabin, a garden with exactly 9 bean rows and a beehive. Every single one of these details feels so grounded, so practical. It feels like something you could actually do.
So you can really break down this blueprint for peace into 3 simple steps. Step 1, shelter. That's the cabin. Step 2, food, which comes from the bean rows and the honey. And then there's this third, absolutely crucial piece, solitude. He pictures a life lived completely alone, where the only noise is the sound of nature, like that bee-loud glade.
And the specific words he uses just keep reinforcing this earthy, real feeling. I mean, wattles? That's not some fancy poetic invention. It's literally just twisted sticks, a real rustic way to build a wall. And he's not just going to be in the forest, he'll be in a glade, a specific kind of clearing. All these little choices ground the dream and make it feel totally achievable.
Okay, so he's mentally built his cabin, he's planted his garden, but what's the ultimate goal here? What is he going to find on this island that he just can't get in the city? Well, the answer is simple: peace. But it's not just the idea of peace. It's a very specific, sensory kind of peace that you can almost feel and hear.
See, Yeats described peace not as an absence of noise, but as something that is actively present. He says it comes dropping slow. It's this beautiful image of peace gently falling from the misty veils of the morning, all while the crickets are singing. So peace isn't silence. It's this immersive experience that's completely tied to the rhythms of nature.
And what's really cool is that this piece isn't just one single monotonous thing. It actually changes its texture all day long. In the morning, it's that misty cricket song vibe. At midnight, it's visual. It's all a glimmer with starlight. By noon, it's this warm purple glow. And then in the evening, it's the sound and the sight of birds, full of the linnet's wings. Every part of the day has its own unique sensory fingerprint of peace.
And there he goes again with the specific details. Notice he doesn't just say birds. He picks a very specific one, the linnet. It's a songbird, known for its really pleasant musical sound. That choice just adds another beautiful layer to this gentle, harmonious world he's building in his head.
Okay, now we've reached the final section, and this is where the poem makes this really profound pivot. It shifts gears completely, from being a dream about a future escape to being a powerful realization that's happening right here, right now, in the present moment, while he's still stuck in the city.
And this whole shift hinges on a contrast of sounds. Just picture it. He's physically standing there on the hard, pavement's gray, surrounded by all the noise of the city, but he hears something else entirely. He hears the super specific, gentle, constant sound of lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore.
So he's got this entire soundscape living inside him, and it's so rich and layered. It's like a whole symphony made up of buzzing bees, chirping crickets, fluttering linnets, and underlying it all, that constant rhythmic lapping of the water. That's the soundtrack that's playing on a loop in his mind, and it's powerful enough to completely drown out the noise of the city.
And that, right there, is the poem's huge, powerful conclusion. He doesn't just remember the sound, he literally hears it right now, always night and day. The whole feeling of Innisfree, it's not just a memory anymore. It's not just a plan for the future. It's become this permanent, internal source of peace that he can tap into whenever he needs it, even on a bleak city street. It's inside him, in his deep heart's core.
So this leaves us with the big, lingering question of the whole poem, doesn't it? Is Innisfree a physical place that you have to travel to, a place where you have to build a cabin and plant beans? Or is the real Innisfree a state of mind, an internal sanctuary that you build from your own memories and longing, one that you can go to anytime you want? The poem really seems to suggest that the ultimate escape might not be a place you go to at all, but rather a place you carry inside you.